For about a year, we lived in Natchez, Mississippi. Um, that was right before we came here to serve as pastor of this church. Natchez, how many of you have ever been to Natchez before? Raise your hand, let me see. It's a really old American city. It's one of those cities that's just loaded with history. I mean, you walk through and you see homes that are 200 years old, maybe even more. Lots of Civil War kind of dating in terms of history, and all of the plantation homes that were there. It dates back to the period of slavery, and just lots of history that's there. Good and bad history, but lots of history. If you want to go somewhere that is rich with American history, it's one of those places. And our American history takes us back 200 or 300 years, some of it a little bit more, but most of the time, if we're going to go see something historical in America, that's going to be roughly the age of it. This past week, many of you know, I was in Israel, and 200 or 300 years is the batting of an eye. It's just amazing when you begin to walk around there and see what's happening and see where we were. I mean, to try to imagine being on the steps where Jesus was probably speaking with the rabbis when he was a boy. Try to imagine what that would be like. Try to imagine getting the chance to see the Jordan River, which is actually the Jordan Creek now, and also see the Sea of Galilee where Jesus would have been with his disciples, done so much ministry. To see Capernaum, the home city of where he based his ministry. To see Nazareth, where he was raised and grew up. To see Bethlehem, where he was born. To see Calvary. To see Gethsemane. To see the empty tomb. Try to imagine seeing all of those things. You simply cannot digest it. I have to tell you that after being there for a week, I'm on overload. And there's many ways for us to be able to share about these things, but for me, one of the first ways that comes to mind is just dump everything on everybody. Say, here's what I did, and here's what I saw, and all of that. And that's a wonderful thing. But in reality, it's kind of hard to do that. So what I plan on doing is more of an overview thing this coming Wednesday. So this Wednesday evening, I'll be sharing all the pictures and all the things that happened on the trip. And I hope you can be there for that. It was a very rich trip. I don't want you to miss out on all of that. But I'm more likely to be introducing pieces of it to you along the way in messages. I'll do that broad overview one time, and after that, we'll basically just kind of take it from there. And trust me, I have no idea what this is going to do to me. It's just going to take a while for it all to sink in. So I'm looking forward to Wednesday and having a chance to share that with you. This will be our normal time. A little bit of bragging I got to do today. I've got my in-laws. I've got Shirley's parents here with us today, Bob and Doris. They served for their entire adult life pretty much in the Salvation Army as Corps officers. And we're really proud of their service. They still serve from time to time when they're called upon as interims. So we're really happy to have them with us this morning. We got to meet Greg and Eva today. We got to meet Tori's parents, and I'm pumped about that. Tori's an awesome young lady. We've just enjoyed her a lot. But today I'm going to brag about my old man. I'm going to brag about my dad for a little while. When I was a little kid, we went to the South Florida Fair. That's where we grew up in the Palm Beach area of Florida. I tell people I'm from the land of the hanging chad. If you remember the 2000 election, that's where I'm from. The county that held up the entire election for 6 weeks. Thank you. We went to the South Florida Fair, and my dad was showing us kind of the Pratt & Whitney exhibit. That's where he worked. He was an engineer at Pratt & Whitney. Of course, I was young. I didn't understand any of it. It was sort of like, can we get on to the stuff that matters? This is whatever. And I really didn't take all of that in. I didn't understand what my dad did, and he didn't really talk about work a lot. So we went and we saw the exhibit, and we did all that's cool, Dad. That's all that kind of stuff. But it didn't really dawn on me what my dad did. It really, it just kind of went over my head, I guess. So I really wasn't very interested at that time. But I came to find out later that he actually had 5 patents in terms of his work and what he had done. And I really didn't know what that meant. This is actually one of the patents that I've got with me today. I asked for permission to bring it with me to North Carolina. And we'd seen it on his wall, seen it in his closet. I actually just lived in his closet for years. But I never really knew what all this stuff was about. I mean, I knew that he had these things, but I didn't really know what they were. I didn't know what they meant. I didn't really know anything about what he did. This past Christmas, we were there, and we were watching movies, as we always do our Christmas movies. And we watched them on DVD, but they got one of those DVD/VHS players. So, yeah. You wish you had one, too. You wish. So the DVD stops, and all of a sudden this other tape starts playing. And it's Pratt & Whitney. It's a 40-year look back at Pratt & Whitney and what had happened there. And my dad kind of lit up. It was just really kind of a cool thing to see, hey, this was my life's work. And now I'm old enough to appreciate what he did, or at least the nature of what he did. And so we were watching this, and it was really kind of cool. And my respect for my dad has always been there, but my appreciation for what he had done. My dad was a rocket scientist, for crying out loud. You've heard it said it's not rocket science. It can't be that hard. Well, my dad was a rocket scientist. He designed and built rockets. And how cool is that? But I didn't really understand what that meant at that time. So I Googled his patents and Googled my dad and all this kind of stuff. And all this stuff, it began to mean a whole lot more to me. This patent actually comes from an engine called the RL-10. Let me read for you what my dad did with this patent. Okay? I want you to fully understand what my dad was all about. Thermal response shroud for rotating body. This invention, by the way, yeah, you can see kind of the application for that engine. It's the bottom of that picture over there. It's my dad with that. And the bottom of the picture is one of those rocket thrusters that helps the rockets go from stage to stage and take off and all that kind of stuff. This invention shows a shroud construction located around the tips of the blades in a rotating body in an engine to provide a minimum clearance between the blade tips and the shroud during all conditions of operation, acceleration, steady state, and deceleration. This shroud construction is connected to the end of two angular flanges, which extend inwardly from an inner engine case towards the rotating member. You with me? You with me? Okay. The shroud member faces the blade tips and is arranged to have a flow of cooling fluid pass therethrough. Cooling vanes extend from the inner engine case into a duct through which fan air passes. Isn't that cool?
Oh, the RL-10.
The RL-10. Yeah. Compressor air passes through the shroud construction. I have no idea what that means. But I do know this. It was very important to the people who would fly in those things. Later on, I would point out that my dad also worked on the F-110 and the F-119 engines. Pull up that next picture if you don't mind. It was engine designed for fighter planes. So he worked on those and had several patents with those as well. My dad was a rocket scientist. He played a key and integral part in designing things that really were part of our nation's history. And yet he retired about 25 years ago. When he retired, of course, the work continued, but the work that he had put in lasted while it needed to be there. And then I'm sure they developed beyond the things that my dad had done many years ago. Now, I'm bragging about my dad, and in his time, that's the kind of stuff that he did. It was really kind of cool. Today, I'm going to be beginning a series called Gifted. The Bible is so big when it comes to spiritual gifts, and it talks a lot about those. The work of the Holy Spirit. What does it look like in our lives? You know, many believers are really confused about all the different teachings that go along when it comes with spiritual gifts. Those gifts are intended to build us up and to bring us clarity in our faith and to strengthen the witness of our lives and of the church as well. But instead, what we see happen more times than not is those spiritual gifts become a cause for division and they harm our witness instead of making it better. The purpose of this series is to help us understand what God really has to say about gifts from the Scriptures, to help discover our own gifts. You're going to have a chance to discover your own spiritual gifts and get the wheels rolling at least. You may already know what they are. And then hopefully also give you a chance to start getting those gifts into motion. I'm excited about this. See, we're kind of like my dad. In our time, we have been given a particular gift that we're supposed to contribute to part of a greater work. And when we do that, great stuff can happen. It's important for us. It's important for our time for us to be able to do this. And it's also important to set the tone for the time to come. Because the time will come when my spiritual gift will probably be outdated. And yet someone else will come in and develop along the ways that I've been doing and do it much better than me. And I'm thrilled about that. And we've begun seeing some of this happen already. People are beginning to use their gifts now and step into roles and to do some things that I think that are really impressive in the life of our church. And my hope is to be able to share some of those gifts with you. I'm going to be interviewing some of you. You don't know who you are yet. And ask you to share with the church about what you've been discovering as you've been putting your gifts to work. I think it's an exciting time for us as a church family to see what that's supposed to look like when we get going with this. Today we're going to be in Ephesians chapter 4, if you've got your Bible or your phone or whatever you've got with you. It's one of the gifts passages, but it's really not so much specifically about the spiritual gifts this morning as it is about the various roles in the church. It's sort of a foundational piece that gives us really more of an overview of what the purpose of the gifts are and how, kind of from a broad stroke view, how they operate in the life of the church. Today we're really more or less laying the foundation of what we're going to be doing over the next several weeks. So if you're in Ephesians 4, Paul writes at the beginning of this chapter, he says, listen, we've been called to one Lord, one faith, one baptism, lots of ones in there. And as part of being that one, God has distributed gifts to us along the way. And then he says these words beginning in verse 11. So Christ himself gave the apostles, the prophets, the evangelists, the pastors and teachers to equip his people for works of service, so that the body of Christ may be built up, until we all reach unity in the faith and in the knowledge of the Son of God, and become mature, attaining to the whole measure of the fullness of Christ. Then we will no longer be infants, tossed back and forth by the waves, and blown here and there by every wind of teaching, and by the cunning and craftiness of people in their deceitful scheming. Instead, speaking the truth in love, we will grow up to become in every respect the mature body of him who is the head, that is Christ. From him, the whole body, joined and held together by every supporting ligament, grows and builds itself up in love as each part does its work. Lord, we come to you this morning and surrender this passage of Scripture to you. It was, of course, passed down to us as a letter written to a church in Ephesus. And yet it contains eternal truth in it, and that's why we read it today. So, Father, today, I pray that you would take those words that have eternal weight and burn them into our hearts. Lord, my words are just air passing through someone's mouth, but your words are eternal, and I pray that your words today would remain and have their full effect in each of our hearts today. And may the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be pleasing and acceptable in your sight, the Lord, my strength and my Redeemer. In the name of Christ I pray. Amen. This is kind of a recurring theme with Paul, this discussion of spiritual gifts, and especially this discussion of spiritual gifts along with maturity. There's a huge problem that surfaces in the early church, and that problem is the spiritual gifts used apart from maturity in the Spirit. In other words, people aren't growing up, even though they have all the equipment that they need, they're beginning to use that equipment in wrong ways. And so Paul's challenge to the church is constantly this: grow up, man. It's time for you to grow up and act like like mature people. These gifts are not toys for you to play with. These gifts are not weapons for you to use on each other to annihilate all the people who disagree with you. These gifts are God's graces to you. That's what Paul is trying to share with these people. They're a means of God's grace to build the church community and to help reach unbelievers. If we're not doing that, I don't care what gift you have. It is absolutely of no effect whatsoever. Today's text, instead of listing the gifts specifically here, Paul lists offices. The first one he lists is apostles. We have to remember that in the first century, all of theology that we have now, our whole belief system, was still very much under development. They were still trying to figure out, how does Jesus fit into all of this? What does it mean if Jesus has come? They were sort of like what I've been on the last week. Total overload. Jesus had come and accomplished his redemptive work, but they were still trying to digest it all and figure out, so what does all this mean now? So they were working this out, and the apostles were key witnesses who had seen it all firsthand. They became kind of the problem solvers of the first century. They became the voices of authority that helped people make decisions on what all this stuff was supposed to mean in the first place. They were their go-to guys. They helped develop the theology and the practices of the time. Then he lists the prophets, and the prophets were kind of in-house voices of challenge that would say, here's what God is actually thinking and saying and feeling right now. They weren't so much foretellers talking about the future as they were forthtellers. They could be talking about the future, the past, and the present, but all they really cared about was giving you God's perspective. But their primary role was inside of the community of the church. It didn't look like this, but the community of the church. Then there were the evangelists. They were much like the prophets. They really wanted to be able to share what God's heart was, but their main audience was not the church. It was unbelievers, people that they could reach out to. And then we have this kind of dual role, this lumped into one package, pastor and teacher. And that was the role that was basically the shepherd of the local body, to try to help guide people through just working their way through the faith when it got down to the nitty-gritty. And to help guide them through not only the thinking and all the things that went along with their faith and the initial steps, but to care for them as well. While we were in Bethlehem, there was a beautiful little shop. Olives are huge. Olive trees are huge over there. They're really gnarly, but they're used for a lot of different woodwork. And I bought this little, Tootie's not here today, but she would really appreciate this. It's a little figure of a shepherd with a sheep on his shoulders. And I needed it. I didn't need this. But I needed to be reminded that I am, in many ways, a shepherd. I'm supposed to be carrying sheep. Now, those sheep may be my family, or those sheep may be the people of this church, people that I know and love, that God has called me to walk alongside with, and to help carry through difficult times, to help walk with them through times when their understanding is being stretched, or times when they're just being wounded and hurt. Sometimes sheep are being belligerent and trying to butt other sheep out of the way. And part of the pastoral role is to make sure that that doesn't happen, and make sure that people don't exercise their strong wills against other people. Lots of different things come into this role of being a shepherd and carrying sheep. But I need this for another reason, which is probably more important to me. You see, Jesus is my shepherd, and I'm on his shoulders too. I needed to be reminded that I'm a sheep as well as a shepherd. And so are you. And it was one of the things that God has used to help and reinforce this pastoral role. Hey, if you are not this sheep, you cannot be this shepherd. If you refuse to be my sheep, how on earth can you shepherd other people? God spoke tremendously through this. So it's any part of my furniture in the desk. Forgive me today. I'm going to be kind of off my game from where I usually am. All these roles helped play a tremendous part in the early church in putting it all together. How does all this work? I mean, what do these spiritual gifts mean? And really these roles were intended to help, use this word here, equip the saints, equip the people who are part of the church. The word's kind of cool because the word is a Greek word. It's used for different various things, and it's katarsis, which basically means it's something that's used for the same context as setting someone's bone when it's broken, or mending someone's net when it's torn, or bringing some kind of unity through political turmoil, if that makes any sense. I don't know if there's any such thing as political turmoil anymore, but bringing unity through the midst of all of that. In other words, it's making something the way it was supposed to be. It's taking what is out of whack and putting it right. And so this word equipping carries all those kind of connotations with it. When it comes to spiritual gifts, however, what we see happen more times than not is churches become broken bones. Churches trying to work through the spiritual gifts, they become torn nets. They become politically divisive. They become very dangerous places. In other words, it's counterproductive. They're going the wrong direction. There's no equipping taking place. It's the dead opposite of that. And the roles of leaders that we have in all of this is to help bring all the believers to a sense of completion in their gifts, so that they're actually able to use those gifts and the church can begin building itself up. So for you and me, what is all this about? I mean, what does it mean? Can we get to the point here, for crying out loud? Are we going to talk about spiritual gifts in a nebulous way, or where can we go with this and actually get some clarity? Today, I think this passage leads us to really the purpose of the spiritual gifts. It's not going to go further beyond that, but this is foundational for us today. So the first purpose, I think, we can see in this passage of Scripture of the spiritual gifts, the first purpose is unity. We were, during the inauguration, it was January 20th, I was in Israel, and we were actually on the Sea of Galilee that day. It was interesting. We were in the boat, and the captain on the Sea of Galilee, the captain of our boat out there, raised the American flag and played the national anthem. It was really kind of a cool thing to be in Israel and trying to process American events from Israel. It's a little bit crazy. As a matter of fact, in Israel, you may not know this, they actually like our president. It's interesting that, they were pretty excited about him. I was in a coffee shop wandering around in Jerusalem one night by myself. And an old guy named Moshe, he says, Trump, what do you think? And he was going on. They really like, they sense that there's a strength on the world stage that he embodies, and that's what is very appealing to them. Our time difference was 8 hours. We're 8 hours ahead of you. And so we were going back to the hotel and watching TV, what's going on in America right now. And of course, things that were happening at noon, we're watching at 8 o'clock. And so we're watching pieces of the inauguration, and we're seeing all of a sudden all the turmoil going on and all these things. And it was nutty. And seeing the media, how they operate, and all of this, and the demonstrations that were going on. It was obvious to us, and obvious to the entire world, that America is not a country of one vision. There are many visions. And we're really a country that's founded on independence, and so it's to be expected that we're going to have many different visions of what this country is supposed to be. And so it's not really a surprise whenever we are in factions and going in different directions. Because of our independence, it'll probably always be that way. But too often like that, we talk about the spiritual gifts and we talk about the church, and we see that same kind of independence come into play. We forget that we have a single guiding purpose and a single guiding person in Jesus Christ. And so what happens is we begin to focus on the spiritual gifts themselves, or we begin to focus on what those gifts are supposed to do. We focus on this and we focus on that. We lose sight of Jesus Christ, and then we begin to splinter. We lose the unity that we were actually intended to have from the very beginning. You see, when you and I, when our spiritual gifts will point us towards Jesus Christ, we have unity. When our spiritual gifts point us towards talking about our spiritual gifts, or talking about particular avenues of church life, or talking about things that we want to emphasize over other things, we have disunity. We have fracture. And so the purpose of the spiritual gifts primarily is to make sure that we do have this unity, where those gifts are intended to point us to Jesus and keep our focus there. Secondly, the purpose of spiritual gifts, as we can see in this passage, is stability. Paul uses two images here. He talks about being infants and being tossed about on the waves. There's the image of being an infant, and there's the image of being a boat. And both of those images help us see how immaturity plays in adversity. They get to work in this whole thing and mess us up a lot. You see, the gifts are intended to be a remedy for both our immaturity and for the adversity that you and I are going to face. Infants are gullible. They'll do anything you tell them to do until they're 2, and then they don't do anything you want them to. But they will do the things that you tell them to when you're just trying to play around and have a good time with them. They're very gullible. They're not very wise. They're not well trained. They're quite unstable. When I was a kid, one of our neighbors took us out to go camping. My brother and I went with him, and he was a former Marine, good guy, but kind of a huge personality. And he took us out to a place called the Corbett area, which was out Pratt and Whitney, where my dad worked. They did testing all the time on engines, so they needed a lot of acreage. The area out there was called the Corbett area. There's a lot of hunting and fishing going on out there, so we went camping with this guy. While we were out there, the guy saw an antenna that he liked. I don't know if it's a shortwave or whatever. It's a huge antenna that he liked. And he told me, man, I loaned that to my friend a long time ago, and he told me he was going to come out here and set it up so I could get it and take it back. And I believed him. My brother is 2 years older than me, and he's smart. He's not like me. So I helped this guy rip off someone else's antenna and take it back to his house. That was my claim to fame in the Corbett area. My brother, much wiser than I, wanted no part of that. But my neighbor was able to con me basically by using the strength of his personality and my naivete. He basically abused my respect for elders and said, hey, let me take advantage of this kid and get him to help me out. And that's what he did. I got pushed around like a weak boat on a windy day on a rough sea. Too many believers, both people I know and people you know, are getting pushed around by strong personalities all the time. They may be famous TV preachers or authors. They may be web voices or people that write blogs. They may be close friends that just kind of push them around a lot because they're able to be pushed around. And they lead people into tangents that lack eternal perspective. And we end up chasing rabbit trails that we don't belong on. They keep us unstable because we're trying to match up with something that's someone else's agenda. You see, the gifts in the church can help keep us steady if we allow them to. Don't be blown away by the most fascinating voices you hear on spiritual gifts. I wish I didn't have to say that. I really do. But there are some ultra-strong personalities that do a lot of teaching that will take you off the beaten path, that will take you into areas where you'll not only misunderstand spiritual gifts, you'll never actually find your own spiritual gifts, and you'll never put your spiritual gifts to work. You will go to your grave having never accomplished the thing that God sent you here for. That's a disappointment. What God wants to accomplish is to make you stable, to allow those gifts to strengthen you, to keep you strong and standing firm. Third today, the purpose of spiritual gifts is maturity. Maturity. We'll no longer be tossed like infants. It's instead, speaking the truth in love, will grow up to become in every respect the mature body of Him who is the head. That is Christ. Infants are very selfish and very demanding. The immaturity is so natural for a baby. I don't have to tell you all this, do I? You see, what's unnatural for an infant is maturity. They don't want to grow up. As a matter of fact, they would love to stay immature their entire lives. Some of you are shouting amen inside your spirit because you want to be that way too. But it's a foundation of self-deception. They keep on telling themselves, hey, I'm cool. I don't need to grow up. It's a lie that they tell themselves, and a lie often that we tell ourselves so we can stay immature. Immaturity is just simply not interested in the truth. It may say that it is. It may boast in knowing the truth, but the reality of it is it's not interested in actually knowing the truth. Because when the truth hits us, many times it hits us in the head first. It's one of those things that registers, and we realize that, hey, I don't have this yet. When I do have this, I'll begin to work it out for the rest of my person, and it'll come to fruition. Many times we know that we're supposed to do something. We know we should do something before we actually do it. And we know that we're not supposed to do something before we don't do it. It happens in our head first, and the rest of our body has to follow. In the same way, Christ is the head of the body. And the truth is already there in him. He doesn't have to figure things out. He already is the truth, and so he doesn't really need to grow anymore. But we have to grow up. The rest of the body has to grow up into the head, that is Christ, so we can conform to him. He can conform us to his image, so that you and I can have the mind of Christ. The spiritual gifts are supposed to lead us towards this maturity. Those gifts are supposed to help us see Christ, who is the truth, and empower us to become Christ-like. That's why God gives these gifts. It's part of a process of maturity that he's leading us to. You see, gifts without maturity create an incredibly dangerous environment around us. Because we think we have this awesome power that comes from God, but we're immature. And the selfishness begins to show up. The arrogance begins to show up. The spiritual abuse of other people begins to show up. We lord it over everybody because we think that somehow we're superior because God has given us this special gift. And we misuse it because we're immature. When that happens, Christ is not being the head. He's not allowed to be the head. We want to be the head. We want to be the body. We want to be everything. And that's not at all designed. Spiritual gifts apart from the head of Christ are a disaster. They're damaging to people constantly, all the time. But gifts with maturity, they help make for a creative environment where God can do cool stuff for people that we never expected in the first place. They create that kind of environment, and there's always room to grow there. And it's a way for us to be operating in effective ministry constantly, because those gifts are being used with Christ as the head and not me and not you as the head. We don't fight over that mess. It's part of our growing up in maturity. Finally today, the purpose of spiritual gifts is for our activity. The stuff that we do. When you and I are filled with the Holy Spirit, when you and I are walking in our gifts and walking in maturity, Christ is the head. We're not fighting all that stuff. We're not being blown around like a sorry little boat in the middle of the water. We're not like infants anymore. We're maturing and all those things are taking place. We begin to do things that bear eternal weight. The patents that you and I come up with have lasting effect in our lives and the lives of the people around us. They impact over the long haul. They have an eternal quality about them. They're not just for the moment. Yeah, they work in the moment. But they're things that just kind of endure forever. Love guides us when we're doing it this way. We treat each other as God intends us to treat one another. Our differences that we have, those natural differences that God has given to each of us, those things surface, but they help the cause. They don't hurt the cause. They're the things that we actually embrace and say, you thought of something I didn't. God has given you something he hasn't given me. Let's kind of work together on this and see what God can come, what we can make out of this. Ministry happens. It's not entirely without effort, not entirely without a mess. But the church has a way of building itself up when we do these things, and our activity is actually defined by who we are in Christ. It's not a program. It's not dependent on our personality or mine or yours. It's really dependent on Christ himself. I'm proud of my in-laws. They served, like I said, with the Salvation Army for many, many years as corps officers. If you don't know what that means, they're basically the pastors, co-pastors of churches, and they're also very involved in community. And their byline, their motto is heart to God and hand to man. Heart to God, hand to man. Isn't that cool? And they live that out. What a wonderful way to use your spiritual gifts, to see God's gifting born into your heart, and then you're able to share that with other people in a way that build the kingdom. Their activity flows from who they are, from their identity. That's exactly what we're called to do. When all this is in place, Christ is directing our efforts, and the things that we do matter forever. I hope that today, and I'm wrapping this up, I hope that by now you're beginning to see that God's intention with spiritual gifts is not some holy roller freak show. He's not trying to make you a sideshow and a circus act. His desire is to equip you, to make you everything you were supposed to be in the first place that He intended for you to be, to set everything right that's been wrong in your life. His desire is that the gifts that He gives you would bring you unity with the people around you, stability and strength of character of who you are, maturity, and that you're always growing into the Christ, into being Christ-like. And your activity would flow out from all those things. That's His desire for you. That's His desire for your family. That's His desire for this church. That's His desire for the Big C Church, for all of us who are part of this collection of believers.